proximity alerts screamed as the solitary frigate's reactor breached safety tolerances. Captain Elena Rostova's finger hovered over the glowing manual trigger panel. Outside her reinforced viewport, 10,000 hegemony warships trained their planet-cracker batteries on her tiny vessel. She didn't flinch. She just initiated the unregulated energy spike. She brought a dead man's switch to a cosmic standoff. And if you want to see who blinks first, hit subscribe and let's watch the galaxy burn. The tactical display had been perfectly clear 10 minutes ago, projecting the designated coordinates where the Solarian surrender was scheduled to occur. Commander Vokar had expected a broken fleet, not a single target. Beyond the observation deck of the hegemony flagship, the metallic ocean of the armada sat in perfect, terrifying formation. Commander Vokar monitored the spatial distortions. The Solarians had been given an ultimatum: surrender the border colonies or face total annihilation. His secondary eyes tracked the chronometer. They were late. A low hum. Then the sensors shrieked. A single frigate dropped out of hyperspace. Mass readings identified it as a deep space scout, barely shielded, sporting the designation the null vector. Vokar's mandibles clicked in irritation. Was this a diplomatic courier sent to beg? Which meant the tactical algorithms were entirely useless. Hegemony doctrine operated on a strict scientific principle of deterrence. Mutually assured destruction only functioned if both sides possessed equal firepower and a mutual desire to continue existing. You do not threaten a planet cracker with a flare gun. Rational species always weighed the scales of survival, calculating the exact point where submission became preferable to extinction. The Solarians were mathematically beaten, yet this unpredictable display defied logic. "Open a direct visual channel," Vokar commanded, his voice echoing across the silent bridge. The main screen flickered, replacing the void with the cramped, dimly lit cockpit of the Solarian frigate. Captain Elena Rostova sat strapped into the pilot's chair. She lacked the ceremonial dress of a surrender envoy, her uniform frayed at the collar. Instead, her hands rested near a hastily modified console. Vokar's gaze zeroed in on the console's center, where her right hand hovered inches from a glowing manual trigger panel. It pulsed with a dull, sickening amber light, cables snaking from its base directly into the deck plating. Vokar studied her face. He searched for the universal micro-expressions of terror, the widened pupils, the rigid jaw. He found only a hollow, terrifying calm. "I am Captain Rostova, sole emissary for the Solarian system," she said. Her voice carried no tremor. The hegemony had conquered dozens of worlds, but how do you negotiate with an enemy who sends one ship against 10,000? Vokar leaned over his command terminal. "Where is your fleet, Captain? The hegemony does not accept partial surrenders." She smiled. It was a gesture Vokar knew meant amusement, but her eyes remained dead. "We didn't bring a fleet, Commander Vokar. We brought a void collapse engine." A murmur ripped through the bridge crew. Vokar silenced them with a sharp gesture. "Impossible. Theoretical physics at best. And even if functional, a localized singularity is a tactical suicide measure, not a weapon of war." "It doesn't create a singularity," Rostova replied, her fingers lightly brushing the edge of the glowing manual trigger panel. "It creates an uncontrollable stasis field. When I push this, it permanently freezes the entire star system, every ship, every planet, every atom, forever." Vokar's tactical officer whispered a frantic prayer to the Voidmakers. The hegemony had assimilated 47 distinct species over 3 millennia. Every single one of them had behaved according to the fundamental mathematics of self-preservation. When faced with overwhelming mathematical superiority, you surrender. You do not sacrifice your entire civilization for pride. Yet the Solarian captain sat there in the silence of her cockpit, her frayed collar framing a face completely devoid of logic. "Your people would never sanction this," Vokar stated. His voice remained level, but his lower digits tapped anxiously against his command harness. He needed her to crack. He needed the facade to slip, just a fraction, to prove she was a rational creature capable of fear. How do you negotiate with a species that weaponizes its own extinction? A weapon of this magnitude destroys the user. It is madness. It is a violation of the primary survival imperative. Rostova's gaze remained locked with his across the cold void. You're right, Commander. They didn't sanction it. I didn't ask a committee. I didn't request permission from a high council. When your vanguard glassed our outer mining colonies last week and killed 300 civilians, we realized something fundamental about the hegemony. She leaned closer to the camera pickup, the shadows of the cramped cockpit painting harsh lines across her face. To defeat a perfectly rational empire, you must weaponize pure, unadulterated insanity. On Vokhar's command deck, the main sensor console suddenly ruptured into a cascade of screaming crimson warning runes. The tactical officer recoiled from his station. The Solarian frigate's power signature was climbing at a violently exponential rate. Exotic radiation flooded the local vacuum, washing over the flagship's hull. It was a raw, unfiltered surge of energy that defied every known safety protocol in the hegemony archives. She was actually doing it. She was deliberately pushing her own reactor past the point of no return to prime the collapse. And now, with the proximity alerts screaming across the hegemony flagship and that singular human finger hovering over the amber light, Vokhar finally understood. He was looking at a predator that simply did not care if it survived the hunt. The frigate's hull temperature spiked into the critical red zone on the flagship's central displays. The energy readings blew past the hegemony's theoretical limits, threatening to rip the fabric of local space apart before the stasis field even fully deployed. The Solarian wasn't just threatening mutual destruction, she was actively, aggressively welcoming it. Vokhar's four eyes widened in raw horror, his mandibles locked tight against his thorax. The hegemony's entire philosophical foundation, the absolute, unquestionable certainty that all biological life fears death, crumbled into microscopic dust against the cold, dead eyes of a single human pilot. She tapped the edge of the console. "All ships," Vokhar roared, the translator unit nearly shorting out from the sheer, unprecedented volume of his panic. "Emergency hyperspace jump. Override all pre-flight calculations, now." The metallic ocean of the armada shattered. 10,000 theoretically invincible warships abandoned their flawless formations, tearing jagged, desperate holes in the fabric of reality. They scrambled over each other in a frantic, uncoordinated bid to escape the localized entropy field. Their hyperdrives screaming in mechanical protest. Vokhar gripped his command harness as the flagship violently shunted itself into the slipstream, fleeing in absolute terror from a solitary, unshielded scout ship. In the final microsecond of telemetry before the hyperspace window completely sealed, Vokhar's tactical display captured the impossible truth. The frigate's fatal energy spike immediately plummeted. The dangerously overloaded reactor core was manually vented into the void, and that glowing manual trigger panel, the terrifying harbinger of eternal stasis, faded to a harmless, mundane green. It was just a dummy switch. That glowing panel wasn't a doomsday trigger. It was just proof of human audacity. What is the biggest bluff you have ever seen actually work? Join us in the comments to share your thoughts, and we will have another impossible standoff waiting for you tomorrow.